Hello and welcome to the CMIP Debate Theatre here at NAB Show 2022. Our next session, Addressable Television Advertising and How It's Changing the Media Landscape. Let's hand over to our panel moderator, Brian McKirk.
Oh, thank you, and thanks to the NAB for putting on the CMIP Pavilion. We're thrilled to be here. I'm Brian McGurk, Senior Vice President of Business Development from LTN. I'm joined here today by Dan Callahan, Senior VP of Innovation and Data Strategy at Fox Ad Sales. Next to him is Tom Sly, who's VP of National Revenue Strategy, and I believe. And I'm thrilled to have you guys here. You're part of a trend in this industry, so I'm excited to sort of share with all of you that the gun has really gone off for addressable advertising. We've got companies, and yours among them, that are at different stages of their journey with addressable advertising. But in reality, we are seeing live campaigns today from all different categories of advertiser, whether it's automotive, technology, fast-moving consumer goods. They're all using it. And it's begun on a platform called OAR, which both of these gentlemen have enabled with their companies. And that really represents about 12 million homes on Vizio televisions. And the magic of this is we actually, through our signaling at LTN, we're able to bring these signals from all these networks to the television, switch out the ads, and voila, you're doing addressable advertising. So that is happening today. I'm also thrilled to point out that by mid-year this year, we'll be adding Canoe self-service to these networks and a number of others. We're well along in that process. In fact, my team is on daily calls on this. So this basically will enable this 12 million footprint to expand another 25 million in Charter and Comcast, which I think at that point really gets us some national scale. And that's been a big obstacle in this business, is that you've got islands of technology that haven't been knitted together. And what we've discovered with our partners is that using LTN signaling and translation technology, we're able to basically take one ad and bring it to all these different outputs and deliver the benefits of addressable to every household. So that's what's happening, and why I'm excited about being here, and really I'm excited to talk about the journey that each of you guys are on, and how we're helping, and what's next. So why don't we begin with kind of where are you in the journey? Set the stage for the audience, and begin with you, Dan, for just in terms of addressable, and you've been at this a while.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely. Dan Callahan at Fox. We have been at Addressable for probably 5 or 6 years, right? Starting in the digital space, really beginning to understand the value of that one-to-one household delivery. Reaching the right audience with the right message at the right time continues to be the holy grail that we're marching towards. And 3 years ago, we started this shift to say, look, Fox is focused on live linear programming. The scale and delivery of that is meaningful and massive in a lot of ways, but through a lot of those same connections, you're able to still pick off those households through these identifiers that are used for digital addressable, really bringing more scale from the linear environment, and I think helping those brands enrich that engagement, enrich that ability to message. And that's where we are today, right? As you mentioned, the OR stuff has been great. We've done a handful of paid campaigns with clients. We use it internally for our promotional marketing group, and there's a lot of value add there as well. But for me, it just comes back to, this digital promise of addressable targeting, and now enriching the linear feeds and delivery to a greater degree. It's kind of so much of a no-brainer, right? Like the word, I keep saying internally, the worst case scenario is your national branding creative runs, right? Like there really is no downside. It's business as usual today. Best case scenario is that household falls within a segment that an advertiser cares about, and they have a specific message that they would like to serve them in that moment. And through your technology and others, we can make that swap and measure it and report back on it. So it's been fun. and I'm excited to continue to see it grow. I don't think it goes away. I think, to your point, it's only getting bigger. It's only becoming more a part of the conversation. As I think that measurement and targeting and really understanding that ROI is becoming more critical to brands as to how and where they spend their money.
Yeah. Tom?
I want to say, Dan, has it really been fun? Come on.
Parts have been fun. Parts have been fun. I know more about signaling and Scotty signals than I thought I ever would, but it has been.
It's not easy.
It's not easy.
Yeah, and I think that's the most important thing to think about. But I will say LTN has made it easy. It's more difficult inside an organization, a traditional organization, to make that transition, to get people to understand where we're headed and how we're going to get there, and to bring them along. And that's where I've tried to be focused on, a number of our team here in Rico, doing my best to bring people along. But we are the Scripps, the first local. So we had the first local ad insertion. We're running promo over promo now. We're not actually attempting to monetize. I think the lesson we learned from setting up a station in Kansas City with OR and the LTN technology to be able to have addressable advertising there is that, like anything, you need scale. And so on a local standpoint or a local basis, one station took a lot of work. I mean, many months to get that live and active, but now we're inserting ads every day. And so our promo over promo every day. From that, we're taking the learnings and we're lifting and shifting that to the ION network. And so one of our over-the-air networks. And so we're in the process of beginning that journey. It'll take us a couple months to get that together. And then we're going to take a step back and figure out how many more local stations do we want to light up, or is it best to light them up as a network and sell them nationally along with our networks, which is most likely where we'll go. But so we're not quite as far along as Dan, and you were the very first, I think, to.
I was hoping we were going to talk more about that. Maybe Evan's watching, but for the record, I would like you to confirm it, right?
I can absolutely confirm it.
All right, perfect.
The first.
He was the first to get out a press release, and he was taking a lot of victory laps on some PR, but nice to
So we were the first
clear that.
on the local side to do this. But, and our hope and goal is that once we have this all figured out, that we'll be able to share it with our peers in the industry, because the integration and the reconciliation is a hard piece on the business side of it, so we're working through those, and LTN's helping us with that. But once we've got that figured out, we want to share with the industry, because us alone, just doing this, and with Dan and AMC and a few others, it's a hobby, or at best it's a test buy for a buyer. And where it really becomes meaningful is when we work together to build scale and a marketplace. And when there's a marketplace, then it becomes budgets allocated. We actually have real money being spent there. And I don't know, we're going to talk about SASO and MASO and all that kind of stuff?
We will eventually, but
okay.
I think you're onto something here, which is working with your internal companies. And I really appreciate the partnership, because both of you in different settings have brought us into effectively internal meetings where you're pulling data, like you said, for reconciliation from systems that previously were run, for linear. Right. And translating that into digital, and then bringing it back as a reconciliation for your ultimate Nielsen client. And I mean, that's pretty unique. I mean, in fact, you will be the first to do that. So that's something.
I'll be first at something.
Yeah.
So and it's it's going to take time, right?
Yeah.
So, but I'm glad that we're doing it, because I think somebody has to blaze the trail. Somebody has to be the pioneer. Unfortunately, the pioneers are often the ones with the arrows in their back. And so, anyway, but we will be the pioneers.
Well, that's very cool, and I just wanted to point that out. So, we're all working with OR today. I mean, what benefits have you experienced from that tech stack, and do you see this becoming a multi-platform, multi-OEM project?
Want me to start?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I very much see, I know that OR is talking, about adding more than just Visio inventory, so we're seeing that other OEMs coming on board, likely we think this year. And look, I mean, there's this convergence that's coming, right? Mm-hmm. So at some point we're going to have, our broadcast, and then we're going to have addressable. And the addressable is going to be connected TV, it's going to be 3.0 inventory, and it's going to be this, ad insertion on the glass. And when we put all that together, there will be meaningful scale for buyers to pay a premium to buy targeted audiences so that they can get the right people at the right place at the right time, as Dan said. So that's ultimately what this is going to come down to. And it's not happening fast enough, but if all of us work together, I think we can advance it. And when this happens, if you can think about publicly traded companies or privately held companies, if you take a certain portion of your inventory, if you can increase the value of that inventory, and for us with 9 networks and 61 local TV stations, and you can do that against 25% or so of the inventory, the revenue becomes meaningful, right? And more importantly, it's a better experience for the viewer and a better experience for the advertiser. And that's ultimately, we're serving all our customers. Yeah.
Yep. And Dan?
I mean,
what
I think
have you seen from OAR?
Yeah, I mean, OAR has been great as good partners in sort of pushing the envelope, evolving the possibilities of what we can do and what we can deliver. I think the next iteration is, yes, the manufacturers that control the glass will probably unlock the value, begin to see sort of the writing on the wall of, either their device carrying those signals and licensing data for us to do these insertions, but that scale has to really help us all, be that shot in the back to move us all forward. So it's been good. I think the marketplace understands the value proposition, at least from a client perspective and what they can do. And for me, as we talked about addressable and its evolution, it's, when you ingest a segment from a client, what is that footprint that you can scale it or forecast it against? And this becomes, hopefully a larger swath of available homes and impressions that can be amended and sold together, right? So you do begin to sort of move more to that convergence cross-screen type sell when you're able to do addressable delivery within the linear feed and environment.
Good. And just, I mentioned Canoe at the top just to bring a new platform in the discussion. They've begun this process of self-service, so we are helping networks now do that. Is this on your roadmap? And have you guys do talk to each other? Are there any lessons learned that you're catching from the others that are working on this? If not, I can share a couple.
Would love your cheat sheet notes. I mean, look, we're talking to everybody, right? We're talking to the different cable companies. We're talking to the different television manufacturers. My fear in this is that everybody's going to try to create their own carved out road and standard and path. And the most overused buzzword in the industry right now is interoperability. I really think interoperability, not just from the application of segments and targeting, but it comes down to the systems, the delivery mechanisms. To your point, Tom, can we create the same rules of the road, elevate the rising tide? My fear is if we're going to have a Roku model and an LG model and a Samsung model, if Canoe locks arms with you, that's great. It's like the more people that can adopt the same standard, it's going to make all of our lives easier, and I think all be more successful in doing this together.
Yeah, we really need to improve access for the buyers and make it easy for them to get to the inventory. Using the same platforms and the same systems and everything, the same requirements. We have to, I think, so the group of us that meet every other Wednesday on a call, and we're talking about best practices for some, but also making sure that we're putting it all together in the same way, so that buyers don't say, oh, I like the way Fox is doing the reconciliation, or I like the way Fox is serving ads better than the way that you're doing it or the way you're selling it. I think hopefully we're caring for the industry. We're thinking about what the buy side wants, and we're putting it together in such a way that there'll be uniformity at some point. I think we'll go to the IAB and ask them to help maybe define it and make sure we've got enough buyer input and so on. But yeah, it's early days, but we're getting there.
They're
we're building
they're allowed to like the way Fox is doing things a little bit more, though, right?
Yeah.
Just because you were first.
Yeah.
Just because you're first, they have to, right?
Yeah. Well, I can report that by virtue of going through this self-service process with Canoe, DirecTV is actually implementing almost an identical process. So we're not necessarily having to reinvent the wheel every time, but there are nuances that we will have to deal with. But I'm very optimistic that this is scalable. Well, I described a path to 55 million homes by mid-year. I see 10 to 20 more coming by the end of year.
I agree.
And that's a national footprint.
Yeah.
So we're off and running.
Yeah.
So, I got a question for you, Dan. You were first. I'll give you that credit. today, 2 years after that first beginning, are you still optimistic, and have you been selling this?
Yes, I mean, still very optimistic, and we have been selling this. I think, like most advanced TV initiatives in the space, time is critical, right? There's an evolution of thought process, there's a development of the technology, there's a comfort, right, that had to happen inside of our walls to deliver the first tests into the first campaign and realize that the signal wasn't falling off the air and we weren't, taking down the feeds altogether, right? So there's definitely a crawl, walk phase that we're in now. Mm-hmm. And I think what's happened is all of us have been talking about this to the same clients and customers that we all call on, that they're like, oh wow, my digital addressable strategy can now be converged with my linear campaign, targeting and informing. Like you mentioned Masso Sasso, I know we're going to get into that, right? Like I'm a big fan of let's get the Sasso model down, which is the same advertiser spot optimization. I think we need to continue to prove out the delivery, the value, the fact that we're not breaking things, we're not breaking that Nielsen C3 rating. There's a lot of things that I still think have to happen in sequential order. If Evan was here, I know he would debate me on it because he wants to blow the whole thing up. But I think that the dominoes have to fall in order for, the networks to be comfortable, and then the agencies and the brands to see the value and be comfortable with it, right? And I think we're well on that path. There's definitely still many more hurdles to clear, but that's the way that at least I've seen the process play out so far, and it's about, building that comfort and getting more buy-in as you just deliver more of these and people become more comfortable and it becomes, standard or commonplace.
That's good.
Yeah, so we haven't really sold anything yet, and I think we know it's coming. Yep. And again, because we lit up a small station in Kansas City, we knew we didn't have enough scale. That was really proof of concept. That's how we referred to that whole thing. Yep. And but I know that we want to start with Sasso. Once we do promo over promo, make sure it works, then we do promo with data targeting, which we are doing in Kansas City now, so we're sure that we can truly make it addressable. Mm-hmm. And then the next step is Sasso. And so we have some accounts that we've done some early seeding on this and talked to about, let's just say it's an OEM, auto OEM, that maybe they have a national network buy, but in certain households you'll see the pickup truck ad, certain households you'll see the OEM's minivan or maybe whatever, convertible or something, sure, right, sports car or something like that ad, and other households you might see an SUV ad, right? So, or it could very well be that the ads are zoned based on different areas of the country, based on weather that's happening then in the winter months, the whatever snow climates, we'll see the SUVs and things like that, right? So lots of flexibility for an advertiser. I think a lot of ability for them to be much more strategic about what they're putting in front of who, when, and where, right? So pretty cool stuff.
Well, Tom, I'd be remiss in not mentioning that ATSC3, and we're sitting in the shadow of the ATSC3 booth, and we're here at NAB. I think of it as just another platform to enable. How does Scripps look at ATSC3 and the possibility of creating that platform for addressable advertising?
I mean, like I said a few minutes ago, I think it's all just going to come together, right? And so in order to get the scale and the more impressions that we have available that are addressable, so it's going to be, and for those of us that were around when cable started, remember there was, buyers had cable budgets and they had TV budgets. And then it just became all TV budgets, right? And so this is going to happen. So right now they've got their digital or connected budgets, they've got their linear, broadcast budgets. And what will eventually happen is there'll be broadcasting, which I think will be important, for certain advertisers who are looking for broad reach, and good frequency. And then there'll also be the addressable for those that are looking for more surgical, delivery of messages to specific audiences. And I think that the 3.0 inventory will very much just be a part of that component that'll include 3.0. It'll include, the digital ad insertion on the glass, and it'll include connected TV, right? And this is all addressable inventory.
I totally agree, and I think Next Gen's got great potential in this area, so I'm glad you talked about it.
I mean, we're bullish. We have a display set up in the Next Gen booth, and we're absolutely on board with that as well. So
good.
Huge opportunity.
Well, Dan, there's a myth out there that some companies that haven't yet jumped into linear addressable are saying, I'm not sure that the premium is there. They'd say, it might be 3 to 5%. You've had some, private exchanges, you've had some discussions. Do you believe the premium is there, and will this all be worth it?
In short, yes, I think it's been worth it. I can confirm the premiums to date have been higher than the range that you mentioned. So, we are happy with the value exchange on what we've enabled and what we've done for what the advertiser is willing to pay for it, right? There's got to be a trade-off there. I think it comes down to what Tom mentioned, right? You buy broadcast for a reason. We've done this in the NFL, which was really cool in the sense that you've got the scale of a Thursday night game nationally, and that advertiser was taking advantage of that opportune time to reach the country. And they had a specific segment underneath that to reach active military veterans and their families and serve them a different promotional offer. And the fact that they were able to sort of tie that in with the national reach that an NFL game provides, it was really a unique instance to show the best of both worlds, right? Still get that mass reach and sale, append this targeting, get this different message out, and for all intents and purposes, not only the delivery against that segment were strong, but the performance that they were able to measure from an attribution standpoint, it's sort of like all of those things begin to click. And when you think about the premium, yes, we're obviously looking to be compensated more for enabling this, but the value that can be unlocked for the brand, depending on the number of targets they're using, the number of creatives that they have in the rotation, not to say that it's limitless, but you can really make it what you need it to be, and sort of get the best of both worlds from doing that SASO style insertion.
Yeah. I might call that hyper SASO, where you have that sort of super hard to reach niche that's added to a buy. When do you see it graduating from hyper SASO to broad SASO, where you've got, is that the auto industry? Who's going to pull us along in that direction?
I think it's the autos, I think it's the QSRs, maybe some of the financial services, right, are the ones that come top of mind for me. What I've learned, and rightfully so, each one of those sub-brands of the parent company or a D2C brand like a P&G, they've got different P&Ls, right? So those are potentially coming together, I think, as they begin to see an investment maybe from the parent company level, and then using this technology to have a national buy and divvy that spot up, right? I'm optimistic and hopeful that is also a hurdle that gets cleared from the brand side, from the buy side, to say we can spend more effectively working together and trading spots, if you will, to a certain degree.
Yeah.
Tom, do you see SASO as the path, or are you thinking of it both ways?
Internally, as we've talked about it, we certainly see it as the on-ramp, and so the place to start. And I think it's easier for sellers and the buyers to embrace. And so I think that, and I also, when you mentioned a few categories, Dan. Even thinking healthcare, right? You have to be careful with the data there and the targeting. But older households, maybe you're talking about elder care and specific types of care. Younger households, you're talking about childbirth and their LDR, whatever capabilities. It's almost limitless. Houses, you're thinking about all the home services, which make up huge categories for us, and based on whether it's a home or an apartment, it's limitless, really, the capabilities for advertisers, and I think they'll be willing to pay in order to have that, hyper targeting or maybe even broader targeting, whatever it is. We know they're willing to do it in digital, and look, at the end of the day, as Dan mentioned, outcomes and attribution. As long as we can show positive outcomes and attribution, we can show that we can deliver a better return on the advertising investment. And I think ultimately that's what we want to do, right? It's our job to make sure that the ad dollar is being, more productive in every opportunity we have. Yeah. And so we are delivering that capability for the advertisers. So
excellent. Well, I'd just take a break for a second and just ask if we have any questions from the audience. Any questions out there? I've got many more here, so don't sweat it. Okay. Well, somebody? Okay. I don't see it. So we've talked a little ahead of time about Nielsen. I wanted to bring up the N-word. Nielsen is basically reportedly declining in importance, and that is something that's highly debated. I'm just saying that the headlines make you think that, and I'm interested to know your position on How is that true, first? And second is, how do you reconcile that, with the C3 ratings? If you do need Nielsen, how do you maintain and protect the integrity of that process?
We haven't crossed that bridge yet, but the expectation is we'll likely take a pod that has direct response ads or something like that we don't worry about the C3. That's the way at least we're thinking, today. And as far as Nielsen, and where they are in the ecosystem and so on, I think it's great that we see TV Squared, iSpot, and these others coming out, and a lot of ACR-based data that I look at. Worst case, it challenges Nielsen, and Nielsen hasn't been challenged, right? And so I think it's good in an industry when there's competition, and I think it's I'm not the data person, and the measurement person of the company, so I think it's really important, and they'll figure out what we think works for the industry. The buyers, of course, have to adapt to it too, and that's the hard part, right? Because that doesn't change quickly, right? So I think, and no matter what, the buyers that are taking and shifting dollars away from spot, like a linear spot, to digital today, are still looking for some means of audience delivery verification. And I know the products that are out there today we have not found them to be accurate. And so I think that's a little bit of a gap, but there does need to be something there. And ACR, quite frankly, is likely one of the best opportunities to deliver against that.
I did want to just take a second to plug one of our more private conversations where you talked about the importance of giving advertisers what they buy and the integrity that you want to uphold through this process. I mean, that impressed me. Is that a value of your company?
Well, absolutely. Scripps is mission-based, but I think, look, integrity is everything in business, especially our business, where we're selling air. And, a lot of times deals are done on a handshake. And so it's important that when a buyer knows when they've reached an agreement with us to buy something, that we're actually able to deliver against that. And so the reconciliation piece is, where these conversations came about. And so, we want with 100% confidence a buyer to know that when they bought something, we delivered everything that they bought, and that we can actually verify that for them, right? So
Dan, tell me about your view of Nielsen.
I mean, we're not in a place right now where we, can get away from reconciling that C3 rating, right? I think to Tom's point, what's been fun is with the ACR tech, it's an enrichment, it's an added insight. You are now pulling in alternative targeting, sets, if you will, right? So I would say it even becomes an interesting way to continue to do Nielsen with some sort of side-by-side or some sort of alternative insight to further enrich and validate what it is that you're buying. So for us, yes, it's delivering on Nielsen, measuring the alternative creative delivery on some of those segments, but it's it still is packaging up and combining both.
We have a question from the I think from. Oh, it took away the mic. What happened? Oh, he's on the wrong channel. All right, we'll come back to you.
Hold that thought. Hold that thought.
You're not allowed. That's funny. All right, well, we'll get back to you in a moment. I did want to touch on another topic, which is making addressable safe. All of you have very big businesses in the linear ad business. How are you going about protecting it, and how does competitive separation play into that?
I mean, I think it goes back to what we were saying earlier about the dominoes needing to fall in some sequential order, right? It's that Nielsen measurement still has to be there. The competitive separation and the podding still has to be there. So that's again why I'm so bullish on the Sasso model. Mm-hmm. I'm not in a position where I can turn around and ask for an entire pod or ask for a couple of DR spots and a couple promo spots. So again, I think we have to prove this out through the Sasso delivery mechanism first, and then we can begin to talk about multi. The other thing I would say about multi is the footprint has to get there, right? If I'm doing multi and it's only in 12 or 24 million homes, there still is then a large subset of devices that can't even receive the multi advertiser insertion if we wanted to, right? So that's when now you're divvying up your footprint where, okay, if these 25 million homes can truly be addressed with a multi-advertiser style insertion, you still then need some national type advertiser, some DR advertiser to buy the remaining 25 to 50 million devices that are not set up to receive the feed. So I think, again, would love to get there. I think as an industry we do. I feel like, I'm young enough that I need to work at this for 30 more years, so I hope it takes time, that we're not going to solve this all tomorrow. Maybe there's some job security in the timeline here, that it takes longer than maybe some of us would like it to. But there's just, in my opinion, 4 kind of critical things that have to happen before you can really say this is digital IP-based, mix and match, and everybody gets their own custom commercial break. And I don't think that's what broadcast is for, to the point you made earlier, right? It's like we still have these appointment-based live events that brands want to reach everybody, right? So it's part of that conversation of the brand, what their goals are, and from us, an inventory and yield management exercise to say how do we better monetize that opportunity? How do we better monetize that event? And selling it all together for that live moment is still the best way to do it today.
Well, why don't we go to the field here? So you have a live mic. Go for it.
Is this working? Okay, thank you. Actually, you just answered one of my questions: is how are you going to determine how much inventory for where you do have addressable capabilities on linear? How much you're going to reserve for addressable versus just national broadcast? I think you just kind of addressed that. It's going to be like a yield optimization type of formula. Yeah. Also, further to that, what about reconciling digital and the linear and digital platforms? So you're like pacing and delivering the full campaign, and both platforms have visibility into what the other is doing.
Why don't you both take a crack at that?
So on the digital piece, like we'll be serving ads through a traditional like Google Ad Manager, or traditional digital ad server. So we'll be able to pace the same way that we would a digital campaign on connected TV. Is the expectation. So I think that is relatively easy. The reconciliation piece, like if you're doing Masso and you're serving an ad over something else, the reason why DR works, we think, to start with, is because they don't always need the ratings, and they don't, not necessarily guaranteed delivery, and it would be DR that was sold with the expectation that it's going to be inserted over. So it's not a full market, kind of a DR. But that's at least where we're starting, and but as Dan said, this is complicated, and I think it's an evolution, and we've got to bring it along. And I think the technology, and we're building, technology to help evolve it. But it's going to take a while for the industry to really do this. I hope no more than a couple years, but maybe it'll take 30 years. Who knows?
Perfect. No, I think we haven't sold a campaign truly across yet, right? They've still been kind of done in piecemeal, where the segment could be the same, but to Tom's point, we use Freewheel for our digital ad serving, and as much as then you can apply that same addressable segment into the linear environment, there's a manual process of combining the delivery from the linear footprint and the digital footprint to roll them up in totality. I do think Freewheel and some of the digital systems are working with Brian and his team on helping those 2 separate footprints really become one and become more unified. But we're not there yet, certainly.
Yeah, with parts of these footprints, we can actually, if they're impression based, they have the exact same measurement, and it's quite easy to think of them together. They use VAST. Others are client-side insertion, so the trafficking's a little different. But ultimately, we can translate that, and we can work with with our network partners to get that data back to you and allow you to sort of make it seamless in Freewheel's interface, in Google GAM's interface. We work with both.
Yeah. I think there's a difference too between the live stream, the live event, and then some of maybe more of the digital on-demand sort of AVOD type viewing environments. And that's maybe where more ACR tech comes into the fold and can actually then say, this household watched this live event and received these addressable ads in that linear opportunity, and they watch something, on demand that evening or the next day, and we're able to roll that up and talk about, again, household exposure, household delivery from some of the ACR providers that are tracking that for us.
But this truly is the coming together of digital and linear. And think of us as a language translator. We're the UN of the plumbing system. So that's really what LTN's been busy at, and it's really unleashed opportunity that I think we've barely scratched the surface of. So I want to
Yeah.
thank both of you for joining us today, and thank you guys for coming to visit, and have a great show.